We here at TrekCulture love a list that's completely topical and on the button and on the money, so you're probably wondering, it's literally called Alien Species You've Forgotten About. What are you talking about? There is actually a reason, and before I start, please note that this article was written a little while ago, and that will make sense as we go on. Sorry, Jack. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 alien species you've probably forgotten about. Number 10, the Axar. You're certainly already familiar with the name Axar. It's the title of the much-discussed fan film project led by Alec Peters that tells the story of Garth of Axar and crew during the 4 Years' War with the Klingons, ending in Garth's ultimate victory at the titular planet. Prelude to Axar, released in 2014, features a gaggle of famously familiar faces and Star Trek alum, the likes of Tony Todd, Gary Graham, J.G. Hertzler, and Battlestar Galactica's Kate Vernon, who of course also appeared in Star Trek, and Richard Hatch. In all of this, you've perhaps forgotten that we've actually met the Axar. They were one of the first friendly species the crew of the NX-01 made contact with, thanks in large part to the linguistic genius of Hoshi Sato. The Axar are androgynous with 400 plus year lifespans, so Captain Garth could even have fought alongside Hoshi's first contact friend at the Battle of Axar. The adversaries in that skirmish have never been given in canon, nor have we encountered the Axar again since Fight or Flight. Number 9. The Hikarans. Star Trek The Next Generation's Season 7 installment, Force of Nature, has never ranked all that well with fans. Despite the relatively strong ecological message at its core, the episode is really only remembered for imposing a maximum speed limit on Federation vessels. And since that idea was rapidly swept back into the subspace disruptions it came from, you'd be forgiven for forgetting the alien species at the center of this warp drive drama. We've only ever met 2 Hikarans, the brother and sister science duo who were trying to save their planet, Hikaris 2, which was under threat from the cumulative effects of warp field energy on the region. Sure, they might both have engaged in some unconventional methods to prove their point, but then most activists don't wait around for the paperwork to clear. Rabal and Sarova were widely greeted with suspicion aboard the Enterprise D. Geordi seemed more concerned by his power conversion one-upmanship with Commander Kaplan of the Intrepid, and Picard fobbed them off to the Federation. Sarova had to self-destruct her own ship before anyone would truly listen, sacrificing herself to prove her theory. There's nothing like a gigantic subspace rift to make people pay attention. Number 8. The Fabrini. You no doubt remember the original series episode, For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. But if someone just said Fabrini to you, your first thought might be alcohol or pasta, not alien species from Star Trek. In physical appearance, the Fabrini were suspiciously human. Let's call that one convergent evolution towards budget savings, and their clothing wouldn't have looked much out of place on Carnaby Street in the 60s. They had to make do on the original series, of course, but with nothing to distinguish them outwardly, it's little wonder that the Fabrini have been forgotten. Nevertheless, what the Fabrini lacked in facial features, they made up for in fairly fascinating backstory. Some 10,000 years before they bumped into the Enterprise, a group of Fabrini escaped their dying planet aboard a generational ship that was also on an asteroid. Think Oumuamua, but it's definitely aliens. When Kirk, Spock and McCoy beamed over, they found that the Fabrini had lost all knowledge of their past and were worshipping the ship's central computer as the Oracle of the People. Fortunately for Dr. McCoy, said computer contained the Fabrini's advanced medical knowledge, enough to cure him of the conveniently deadly xenopolycythemia. Number 7. The Antarns. The Star Trek Enterprise episode, The Breach, is a bit of a mixed bag, of speleothems mostly. On the one hand, it's an attempt at a moral tale about the perniciousness of deep-seated historical prejudices, and on the other, it's a comedy cave rescue caper. You've likely also forgotten about the alien species at the center of that first plotline, the Antarns, once embroiled in a bloody series of wars with the Denobulans. The actual fighting may have ended over 300 years ago, but an extreme animosity remained between the two peoples, so much so that an Antaran patient, Hudak, refused life-saving treatment from Dr. Phlox aboard Enterprise. Captain Archer then ordered Phlox to treat Hudak against his will, even suggesting sedation, arguing that the doctor was ethically bound to help if he could. Phlox refused, stating Hippocrates wasn't Denobulan. Whatever the reasons, Hudak had the capacity at that stage to refuse care. Treating him would have, therefore, been unethical. It seems more than a little odd that Archer would have forgotten about the importance of informed consent in Earth medical practice. In any case, Phlox and Hudak began a different kind of healing process, but it's one we never hear about again. Number 6. The Herk. Named from the Klingon word Herk, slang for outsider or foreigner, her meaning outside, The Herk have only ever been mentioned by name in 2 episodes of Star Trek. Presumed extinct by 2372, we don't even know what the Herk looked like. The species was introduced in The Sword of Kahless, in which our trio of honorables, Dax, Kor, and Worf, go on a quest to find the titular weapon, nabbed by the Herk during their invasion and pillage of Kronos over 1,000 years prior. After Jadzia identifies Herk writing and DNA on the sword's shroud brought back from the Gamma Quadrant by Kor, all 3 set off to the ruins of a Herk museum. That's about as much of a look at the species as we get. The rest of the episode is mostly 2 grown-ups arguing over a bit of metal. The Herk then get a second offhand mention in the Star Trek Enterprise episode Affliction. Star Trek Online gives the species quite the backstory, however. In it, the Herk were once a peaceful race until the Dominion stopped by and removed a crucial fungus from their ecosystem. This caused the Herk to go insane and start their rampage as the Great Plunderers of the Galaxy, as Kor would later describe them. Number 5. Gods and Devils. That Tennessee Williams line has perhaps never been more literal than when applied to Star Trek. Take away all of the demons and you'd lose the angels too. Over the years, Trek has run the inventory of devils and deities, very real incarnations of the classic good versus evil battle that even the future can't do without, and all the better to know our crew by. That's not to forget that frontiers are still drawn in the galaxy between bellicose empires and the friendly Federation. There are those you'll know: Apollo, Shakari, Ardra, the Prophet's pal Wraiths, Janeway's dad, Satan's robot, plus probably the Q on both sides of the fence, and those you won't. Our own Frank Chavez has recently written about the much misunderstood Megans of the animated series that gave us Lucian himself in satiric form. Animated series writer Larry Brody had always wanted to do an episode where the Enterprise met God. Studio execs hated the idea, but they didn't mind a story about the devil. Go figure. There's one last godlike alien species you've probably forgotten about: the Preservers. All we've seen in canon of this powerful race, who certainly liked to act the transcendent part, are the obelisks they left behind on their protected planets. Number 4. The Ramorans. There's more than a little irony to the fact that Star Trek Voyager's Unforgettable is one of the show's least memorable episodes. It's less surprising then if you can't recall the Ramorans. In fact, no one, on screen at least, was supposed to. Isolationist to the nth degree, the Ramorans were forbidden from leaving their home planet. Highly advanced in stealth technology, Ramoran biology was also adapted to their covert existence. A pheromone released by their bodies blocked long-term memory formation in anyone they encountered. Within a day or so, you'd forget you'd even fallen in love. Twice. Those Ramorans who did try to escape their homeworld were hunted by tracers and had their memories wiped by neurolytic emitters. That might have ended Chakotay and runaway Kellin's romance, but at least the latter got to forget everything about Neelix's cooking. Given the Ramorans also had a knack for computer viruses to erase every last shred of their presence, it is highly unlikely that any record of the species made it back to Starfleet. With zero context, Chakotay's pen and paper approach would have just seemed like the scrawlings of a madman. Number 3. The Skagarans. You might not be the only one who's forgotten about this species, nestled away in what was once the Delphic Expanse. We still don't know if Captain Archer, when he was done saving the rest of humanity, made good on his promise to alert Starfleet to send help to the human Skagaran planet from the episode North Star. It's somewhat surprising that Enterprise had its practically mandatory Western Frontier episode right in amongst the fast-paced Xindi arc, but with 24 of them to write in that season, I suppose they had to slow down at some point. The episode was interesting enough, if a little clumsy with the real-world parallels it attempted to draw. The Skagarans themselves were relatively intriguing as alien abductors from Earth's past. Sadly, we didn't get to meet Amelia Earhart this time. Already a technologically advanced society by Earth's 19th century, warp-capable with directed energy weapons and transporters, the Skagarans enslaved thousands of humans to assist in the creation of colonies on other worlds. Humans on the North Star planet rebelled, however, subjugating the Skagarans in turn until the NX-01 intervened to stop them. Perhaps more generally, we need a long trek to tie up all of these alien abductor storylines. Number 2. The Vandorians. Oh, okay. I'm going to read this as it's written, but please send a bit of love to poor Jack, who wrote this before the episode Caves of Star Trek Lower Decks' 4th season. There is one purple-haired ensign, now a lieutenant junior grade, who won't forget his first Vandorian. It had taken the form of a put-upon Andorian elder on Tulgana 4, and Boimler then naturally phasered the wrong blue guy, starting a bar brawl until Beckett, Kirk Hans Mariner, stepped in to offer drinks. The lesson? Always know your shapeshifters or you'll end up working on a research asteroid. The Vandorians made their debut back in the 1970s in the OG animated series episode The Survivor. A truly alien species, the likes of which only animation could really achieve at the time, the Vandorians were octopus-like creatures capable of rearranging their own atoms to become anyone or anything, even engineering components, of relative size. Imitation being the sincerest and creepiest form of flattery. If a Vandorian maintained the form of a person for long enough, it could begin to take on the memories, emotions, and attitudes of that person. This was the case for famous and formerly lost explorer Carter Winston, who crash-landed on the Vandorian homeworld, living there for almost a year before his body ceased to function. The masquerading Vandorian who had cared for Carter then weaseled his way aboard the Enterprise to commit all sorts of sabotage. And just another note that these aliens would come back quite recently in Lower Decks, where they're still up to their shape-shifting shenanigans. Number 1. The Saarans. How do you solve a problem like the Saarans? I don't know. Get it on with Commander Riker? From a relatively memorable episode, with another memory wipe, it's likely you've forgotten about this particular alien species. Let's begin with a show of good faith. His last words, Picard, which you soon won't remember either. Careful, it's the namesake of that guy from the Scottish play, or Suds from The Simpsons, if you prefer. What's he doing there on the bridge, dripping with dramatic irony? Don't play dumb, Macduff. We all know you're not a member of the crew. Now, let's get to solving this little conundrum, as there's a highly advanced android down in 10 Forward wasting an awful lot of processing power serving drinks. When Macduff's machinations are uncovered, despite the general amnesia, his true Saaran form is briefly revealed thanks to a couple of rapid phaser volleys. Under the Starfleet garb, he'd probably be due a mention in the Gods and Devils entry on this list. Demonic, almost mummified in appearance, with bulging eyes, mouth and teeth exposed, and a thoracic region laid bare in grim skeletal fashion, whatever counted as flesh for a Saaran was a nightmarish mottled grey. I doubt many are holidaying on the Saaran homeworld of Sothis 3, put it that way. Folks, thank you so much for watching along, and thank you so much once again to Jack Kiley for writing this list. You are awesome and wonderful. Please check out the original list, and please make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure you're following us over on Twitter at TrekCulture. We're on Instagram at TrekCultureYT, and we are, of course, on TikTok and Blue Sky as well. I have been Sean Ferrick. You can follow me on the various socials. Look after yourselves until I'm talking to you again. Make sure that you live long and prosper. Take care. Thanks very much.